Longtime Xbox executives Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond are out, with Xbox promoting former AI executive Asha Sharma to Spencer's former Microsoft Gaming CEO role. Welcome to Inside Games Cast, the only newsy podcast brave enough to realize that if you spend almost $70 billion on an acquisition, you better get results.
Yeah, and I guess now we know exactly how long Microsoft's patience is for those results to land. I guess about 2 years, maybe 3. And like Bruce said, this is, I guess, Inside Games Cast, a bit different than we usually handle news stories since this is such a big topic. First, we're going to cover the news like we always do, and then we're going to discuss the implications a little more at length than usual. You know, that's our typical format, but we're going to get into it today because there's a lot of angles to talk about here. So get a snack. We got some yapping to do, but let's cover the news right at the top here.
Let's do it. Former Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer announced his retirement last Friday, ending his 38-year tenure as a Microsoft employee. That's reported by IGN.
Former Xbox president Sarah Bond, long considered to be Spencer's heir apparent to the CEO title, has also departed Microsoft.
Yeah, instead, Microsoft appointed Microsoft Core AI president Asha Sharma as the new Microsoft Gaming CEO.
Former Xbox Game Studios head Matt Booty has been promoted to Chief Content Officer.
Oh boy, guess what, Lawrence? There's already drama. I mean, it makes sense. There's a big shakeup. Writing for The Verge, Tom Warren reports that these announcements were not meant to go out last Friday and that plans were rushed due to IGN's reporting on the matter. So actually, the announcements were supposed to go out today, the day we're doing this podcast, according to The Verge.
Yeah, that would have been a lot nicer for our news cycle. I thought it was planned. Usually you land tawdry news at the end of the week so that, people like us don't have a lot of time to ruminate on it before the weekend. There is circumstantial evidence to show that Sarah Bond's departure wasn't entirely planned or maybe even amicable.
For starters, Phil Spencer, Asha Sharma, Matt Booty, and Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella all had statements prepared for the event, which were sent to Microsoft employees and then posted in full by IGN.
Now, Bond, however, did not send an internal message. She instead posted a message on LinkedIn the following day.
It's really interesting. The message is about as diplomatic as you'd expect, with Sarah Bond saying that she's, quote, decided this is the right time for me to take my next step, both personally and professionally, in addition to celebrating her former coworkers and gassing up Sharma a bit.
Yeah, all classy maneuvers, but still it's a bit odd that it kind of deviated from everyone else that was involved with this. Warren also points out that Bond's social media team posted an innocuous message soliciting responses to an accessibility survey on LinkedIn just hours before this news hit. And that doesn't really seem like a thing that would happen if today's the day that you're leaving the company.
That's a really good point. The Verge attributes Bond's hurried exit to the failed, quote, this is an Xbox marketing campaign, which confused customers and apparently offended Xbox employees.
Yeah, people really liked pointing and laughing at that, even though I kind of got it. I thought it was pretty elegant in saying where they were taking the brand, but I think most people didn't want the brand to go that way. Yeah, the report from The Verge also claims that many Microsoft employees found Bond difficult to work with, while simultaneously praising her ability to strike partnerships with corporate partners. I don't know, this report has seemingly put a lot of negativity on Bond's head, which I don't think is quite fair. I think any executive, if you disagree with them, is going to be difficult to work with. But of course, I didn't work there and I don't know the peculiarities, but still, some of these phrases, I'm like, well, that could apply to everybody.
100%. Sarah Bond's departure may have come as a surprise, but The Verge reports that Spencer's retirement has been in the works for a while now. Phil Spencer reportedly took a long vacation about a year ago, kicking off rumors of his retirement that Microsoft eventually had to deny. And I remember this. People were like, Phil Spencer retiring? And everyone's like, no, he's not going anywhere.
Our new gaming overlord, Microsoft Gaming's CEO, Asha Sharma, is a bit of a question mark. We don't really know what to make of her just yet.
She doesn't have any background in gaming or entertainment. This is something I've seen the internet been debating all weekend. Instead, having served as the VP of Product and Engineering at Meta and the COO of Instacart before that.
Yeah, bouncing around. The thing that bugs me a little bit is that her tenure at any of her previous companies is never longer than 4 years. That's not uncommon for corporate America. You typically have to bounce around a lot and always be hiring up because of the power of your resume. But that means we can't get any kind of sense of how her strategies or long-term execution plays out at any of the companies she's worked for.
So all we have to go on is the internal memo she sent to Microsoft employees, which focuses on 3 commitments. Lawrence, what are those?
Yeah, the first she writes are great games, and she voices a lot of confidence in Matt Booty to deliver those great games.
That's great. Asha Sharma said, quote, Matt Booty understands the craft and the challenges of building great games, has led teams that deliver award-winning work, and has earned the trust of game developers across the industry. I've been able to speak to Matt Booty a number of times personally. He is a fantastic individual, at least according to the conversations I had with him. Seemed very keyed in to Xbox, so I'm excited for him to do that.
Second, she also promises the return of Xbox, without really specifying what that means beyond a recommitment to core Xbox fans and players.
Ashley Sharma simultaneously describes a renewed commitment to Xbox consoles while also promising a seamless Xbox experience across PC, mobile, and cloud.
Sure is fun telling people what they want to hear, isn't it?
Yeah.
Finally, Sharma commits to the, quote, future of play that will involve new business models. And that's the phrase that starts alarms ringing in my head.
Me too. She doesn't say what those models will be, only that they will not milk and monetize their existing IP. She also pledges to not chase short-term efficiency or flood our ecosystem with soulless AI slop.
A great thing to hear. Let's hope that it stays true or that it materializes in any meaningful way. She concludes her note by evoking a return to, quote, the renegade spirit that built Xbox in the first place. I never really thought of Xbox as that renegade, but I guess, again, it's one of those fun things to hear when you're stepping into a role and have nothing but potential in front of you. And that about wraps up the news. I mean, there's a ton more small details to dive into, but I kind of want to focus more on the big picture, at least when we start just kind of talking generally about it. So the easiest thing to do now is to pass judgment. Now that the era has passed, how do we feel about Spencer's run as an executive?
Man, oh man. I was talking about this, and the more that I thought about his run as an executive, he got hired in 1988 for Microsoft. That's a long time to be at one company. And I truly do think, even now, after the acquisition and Game Pass and all that stuff, I really do think Phil Spencer was the right man for the job. It's too bad that in the last 5 to 10 years or so, things really started to go the way of Microsoft. The company, Satya Nadella, needed money from them right away. And I think that was I think that was the beginning of the end for Phil Spencer. Because once he sort of started working on Xbox after Don Matrick, I really do think he was doing all the right things. He was saying all the right things, but truly the moves he were making were good. And he does know Microsoft from the inside out. He'd been there almost 40 years. That's the kind of guy you really do want at the head especially of a gaming department. Is somebody who clearly cares about the company, clearly cares about games. It seems like he was the right guy. And we've given him a lot of shit over the years here on Inside Games. But generally speaking, I do think he was doing a good job, and Game Pass and that Activision acquisition, that was it. Those were the bad moves, and it's most likely because Microsoft was like, we need more money and we need it right now from you, Phil.
I think so too, and even with that mandate, I'm sure that his mandate was always to make money. As any department under Microsoft must. Yeah, at every step in the way, what I saw from him in his decision making was a customer-conscious drive to offer value, and hopefully through value would achieve his goals. Versus, I don't know, through strong-arming or creating more closed garden ecosystems. What I see in retrospect, and I think this is a bit unfair, I see a lot of people needling Phil Spencer for not retroactively being successful with everything he did, which I guess is fair. If you're going to be the CEO of one of the biggest companies and you've got the budget and you've got the talent and you've got the people and you are the guy, it is your job to do that. But mostly I see a lot of dissatisfaction with him for not making Halo great or really just kind of reviving that millennial enthusiasm for Xbox brand or Xbox consoles. And that may even be a little more focused in the United States since the Xbox had a little more of a foothold here. But please, if you're very empowered to think that, but my God, is that the most impossible thing to do, to make successful games? It seems a bit silly, but yes, even with all the money and talent and budget, other companies have not been able to do this. No company has, almost none. PlayStation sitting where they are right now because they managed the transition into digital ecosystems so much better than Xbox. And that is actually the beat at which Spencer enters the story. Don Matrick flubbed the Xbox One launch so hard. And that was the important console to get everybody playing Xbox, buying digital games on Xbox, getting their friends and game libraries all built up on Xbox. Instead, everyone went PlayStation, and they were able to ride that transition into PlayStation 5. Not to say that PlayStation didn't do a bunch of other stuff to ensure that. Their run in the PS4 software, legendary. You know, we got the God of War reboot, Last of Us. Those are the games that weren't quite in the Xbox ecosystem at that time to carry it. So I get all that. But also, I don't know. To me, like you were saying, Bruce, the decisions he made and the strategies he executed, I think were very customer friendly, very gamer friendly. Right away, when he moved in to try to salvage the Xbox One, he decoupled it from the Kinect, slashed the price, tried to get this out there, had the Xbox One, that giant VCR, redesigned into the One X, which was a much more powerful, well-engineered machine. The Xbox Series launch, people again like to point and laugh because it didn't sell. But I don't think that was the fault of the hardware or even the strategy going into it. People really reviled the Xbox Series S, I think, because a lot of reporting pinned certain games not hitting Series X because of its existence. But that was ostensibly the right call of having a low-cost machine with low-cost game. It was low-cost at the time. An Xbox Series S with Game Pass was the best value in gaming, but it turns out it landed at a time when people didn't care about value, even though they said they did. So I think Spencer was pursuing the right strategies and trying to do the right thing, but the tumult of life and the unexpected nature of how the market behaved meant that it didn't work. But I think those were still very sound strategies, trying to produce good hardware at a cheap price and provide cheap access to a wide variety of games. I think his curation of Game Pass has also been really good. There's an equal balance of Xbox Game Studios, quote unquote, day one big releases hitting it, but there's also just rafts and rafts of very well curated indie games that are on that service too. And I don't like nobody gives any credit for that sort of thing. You know, just kind of take it for granted. But as a pretty avid Game Pass user myself, PC Game Pass specifically, I get to dabble, I get to sample so many games that would cost me so much money otherwise. That makes me a pretty particular user. Not many people use or even get value out of Game Pass in that way. But I can appreciate the intent to set it up as an honest service that delivers a lot of value if you use it in the way that I guess I use it or that maybe they consider power users to use it. So I guess to sum it up, I really appreciated all of his decision making, and I think it's a bit tragic that it didn't work out, but that's the way the cookie crumbles.
This is a really interesting point that you brought up with Series S and Game Pass, because I'm starting to see that as the inflection point for Microsoft. Because with Game Pass, Phil Spencer started an entirely new business model that now everybody's following. I mean, every single thing is subscription, everything. Streaming on demand, cars have subscription. Like he clearly was ahead of his time when it comes to Game Pass, and people hate it. They hate the subscription service. They hate it, but everyone's doing it. So it's one of those things where I think Phil Spencer was way ahead of his time on Game Pass. It is unfortunate because I remember when they first started launching Game Pass, and they were like, "It's $1," and I was like, "What?" And they're like, "It's $1. You get 100 games," and I was like, "That can't be right. That cannot be right." And they're like, "No, seriously, it's $1." That's bad because they signed up everybody. And everyone went, "Whoa, $1 for 100 games? This is going to last forever." Of course it wouldn't. Of course it's not going to last forever. So it's going to be a rude awakening as soon as anybody raises the price on something like that. And that's what happened over the years. Has been raising the price on Game Pass. And of course, we just reported, it was like 6 months ago, that they raised it to like $30 a month or something. And everyone's like, "No, thank you." So maybe they should have made Game Pass a little higher, maybe like $10 a month. Back in like 2015, which I know seems like a lot, but better than $1. And so then as time goes on, as time marches on through the mid 2010s to about the start of the pandemic, he has to launch the Series X and S versus PS5, and that's a pretty tough gamble right there. And again, to Lawrence's point, I really do think Series S was a very, very smart move. But what's funny about all of this, I like to look at all these things from macroeconomic conditions. Beginning of pandemic, 2020 through 2021, 2022. Series S with Game Pass, like you said, it's $300 for the Series S, and then it was like $10 a month for Game Pass. Everyone's like, "What a deal, unbelievable." Nobody cared because everybody had money. Everyone had money in 2020 and 2021. The inflation hadn't hit. So everyone was talking about, "Oh my God, we got all this money. Series S, piece of trash. I could buy a Series X. It's $500. I'll buy the best video games." And who cares? Game Pass Ultimate, give it to me. Everyone did this, like blah, 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 consume. Well, then inflation hits. And then Phil Spencer has to raise the price of the Series S and Game Pass at exactly the same time. So now not only is the Series S responsible for all those video games not coming to Xbox Series X because it's underpowered or whatever, then they have to raise the price of Game Pass. And everyone's like, I don't have any money for this. Inflation's killing me. I have to buy groceries. I can't spend $400 or $500 on a Series S and $20, $30 on Game Pass. This is a piece of trash. I hate this. So, man, oh man, talk about the worst possible scenario for you to launch a really cheap product when everybody has money. What a weird thing, too, because like you'd think, oh, value, of course, value is going to sell all the time. Nope. It's maybe Phil Spencer's only major flaw. I know he has lots of flaws, obviously, we all do. But his only major flaw was that he couldn't pivot quick enough. Maybe that if he had instead launched the Series S at a higher price, weirdly enough, or kept Game Pass at a higher price throughout Game Pass's life, we wouldn't be seeing the now desperate claw for money. Because that's what Microsoft Gaming is doing. They're like, they need the money. They've been losing money for years, especially with the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. That acquisition, I think, was a response to Satya Nadella. I want to say that Phil Spencer was like, fine, you know what? Fuck it. You want money? We'll buy this. Give me $70 billion. We'll buy Activision. And we'll get Call of Duty on Game Pass. And then you'll get all the money you want, Satya. And not the way it worked out. But initially, when you look at it, Microsoft is a $1 trillion company. They've got the cash. Everyone's like, of course, we'll spend the money. No big deal. It's 2022. Whatever. Who cares? Right? Money's free. It's everywhere. Not anymore. And so that's the problem, is that, again, Phil Spencer had a bunch of money, spent a bunch of money when everybody had money. And then, oh, man, talk about a huge, huge problem with inflation right after that. So if he had pivoted quicker on that, if he had instead been like, you know what, maybe let's not do the acquisition. Let's just hold back, not spend all that money, and then not make profit, because I'm sure they're not profiting on that acquisition now. Then maybe he'd been in a different spot. Or Phil Spencer just wanted to leave. I don't know, Lawrence. Maybe he just wanted to get the fuck out.
Well, I could certainly see it being exhausting. He got to enjoy maybe 10 years of being the savior of Xbox. And then once a lot of cold reality started kicking in, or really the market didn't respond to his strategies, then suddenly he became the killer of Xbox, because he was always raising prices. And you could see him fade away from the public image as well when that happened, because I don't know, that stuff's got to, being the CEO of a huge organization like that must be taxing enough. But then when you become just like the whipping boy for the internet because of failures that no one could have seen coming, kind of like you said, I do think, like, let's say pandemic, instead of Series S and X, they have Series X and Series XXX or something like that. They have an expensive console and then the premium ultra console, which is what people kind of wanted at that time and were willing to spend money on. We saw PlayStation 5s going for $1,200 on StockX. People were so invested in PlayStation as a brand, they didn't even question buying the next one. It was just the assumed thing to do. And that's why I think the value play didn't work out, even though it should have, and theoretically was like, in terms of market strategies, that's the most moral thing you can do, right? Is offer a competing product at a better price. That's what they tried to do. And yeah, to your point, all the acquisitions, I always saw that as an escalating play to try to secure exclusives for the Xbox ecosystem, which is what a lot of old heads like you and I kind of think about in terms of ecosystem. Exclusives are what got PlayStation to where they are through the PS4 lifecycle. Now, ironically, they have none, but they're still enjoying the momentum of having all those good exclusives and getting that baked-in hardware platform and the attachment to the ecosystem that's associated. So Spencer started kind of 10 years late, but then he went on an acquisition spree, trying to secure the biggest and best games for Xbox. Bethesda was a huge play because they were going to get the next game from Bethesda Game Studios. That ended up being Starfield, and it ended up being kind of mid. But again, if you're going by the strategies, that's the right thing to do. You're going to secure the next big action RPG. These games tend to sell tons. They tend to sell for years. You're looking at Skyrim sales and you're like, we could have the next Skyrim exclusive to Xbox, exclusive to Game Pass. That's a slam dunk. Didn't end up being one. I think the same case with Activision. I think they got it through because they could get Call of Duty on Game Pass. And that's the next Hail Mary to try to see this spike in subs. And to me, I think that graph is everything about Phil Spencer's tenure with the company, is the graph of Xbox subs. I think back to, we learned because of the lawsuits to try to prevent the acquisition of Activision Blizzard, we learned a lot about the state of Xbox's business. And one of the most telling and scary things was that they were way, way behind their projected signups for Game Pass. Now, I think any executive that offers any projections about their strategy is going to be very generous with those projections. They're going to, oh, this graph's going to go up and up and up and up. So I'm not convinced that those projections were even realistically believed by anybody, but they were so far behind even that I think this was, the Activision thing was Spencer's Hail Mary. I think he got it through. He and Sarah Bond apparently worked pretty closely together on that. I think that by itself is pretty defining of his run at Xbox. That's a pretty great acquisition. Activision Blizzard, as it was and still is a money machine, thanks to Call of Duty and World of Warcraft and Candy Crush. So that's a pretty fat revenue thing to go onto Xbox's division, even if they had to get, $70 billion in the hole to get it. But I think that set them up, and I think Spencer was hoping that Call of Duty and maybe Starfield before it, and maybe this litany of indie darlings they got from like Double Fine and Compulsion Games and Forza, maybe he was hoping that any one of those global hits would finally reverse this trend and get people on board with the Game Pass idea. But people just don't want it, which is really fascinating. And again, 10 years ago, there's no way to know that. People were signing up for Netflix. They loved it. They celebrated it. It was all this new revenue. So it makes sense to apply to games. I can't think of a way to do it in better faith than Xbox did. Price increases notwithstanding, if we take that out, which is hard to do because we have to pay for it. But the games that they got on there and the deals that they struck and the partner relationships that they established, I think they got some heavy hitters and continue to. But yeah, the audience, just like the Series S, is not here for it, and in some cases even resents its presence.
The more that I think about this too, because you're right, Lawrence. Like his strategy seems sound, and I'm sure he's telling everybody we had a low price, amazing value proposition for everybody. And I mean, everybody that talks about it said that. They said, "Yeah, I spent $300 on this thing, and then I'm paying $10 a month, and I can play 100 games a month. Like, it's great." And so people always talked about how great Game Pass was. And I'm going to say it again. Now this sucks because I'm sure Phil Spencer's probably heard this 1,000 times. If he had raised the price earlier when people had money, that would have been it. I think that would have solved a lot of these issues, not most of them, but a lot of them. And maybe they would never have had to acquire Activision Blizzard, because I think that probably is what did him in here. I think that was probably like I said, the beginning of the end. Just because once you're in the hole that much, people have to remember the context of where Phil Spencer was. I say this a lot, and I've always said this for Phil, but I'm going to say it again. He was not the CEO of a company. He's a CEO of a division inside of one of the largest companies in the world. And that there is still pressure from the top. Phil still has to answer to 2, 3, 4 other people, the board, Satya Nadella, all those other people. So then when they come to him and they go, "Brother, your profit margin's at 10%, we need 20. He has to do it. Otherwise they fire him, right? He loses his job. So he's got to keep doing that. He's got to keep delivering for Xbox. Not to mention, I'm sure he gets bonuses and shit like that goes along with, right? If he hits those profit margins. So he's got to do it. And I don't know that he maybe knew that. This is something I would have trouble with. I think about putting myself in his position. If I were in his position and I'm like, I'm giving everybody the lowest price thing with so many different games, how am I failing? And the actual answer is business. Truly, you do actually have to raise the price on things like that. If there is demand, you can actually there's an actual window of raising the price to where you can hit the top. And eventually you'll hit the top, people will stop spending money. And you'll be like, okay, that's where it is. PlayStation's doing that right now. PlayStation is literally raising the price on you personally, and they're finding out where you're going to stop spending money. And that is part of capitalism. It's part of the free market. So Phil Spencer may not have been exercising that as much as he could have been.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. If you think about kind of like you were doing that exercise where you are Phil Spencer and you're told to raise your profit margins, how do you do that? You don't do it by selling hardware. I mean, those have a margin on them, but not much. You only sell hardware to get people into the ecosystem so they buy digital games from you so that you can scoop 30% off of all those sales. That's what PlayStation did and is doing, and that's where all of their money is coming from, or a vast majority of it. Getting fractions of FIFA Ultimate Pass or EAFC Ultimate Pass transactions. But Spencer didn't have that install base, and he didn't have that foothold. He wasn't able to develop that foothold with the gaming populace. Again, kind of going back to the boxed Xbox One launch of TV. It communicated well and clear to everybody thinking about getting an Xbox or a PlayStation which console they ought to get if they like playing games. So that was such a hamstring to walk into with. And then, yeah, he had, I guess, 10 to 15 years to try to figure out where to make that money. I think Game Pass was the right call from a business sense, because he can control the margins on that pretty closely. And I'm sure he had, like we saw in the lawsuits, he had projections that would get him to the promised land if he got X number of signups. And a lot of the interviews he did in the years since, he was always very clear that his entire strategy was around driving Game Pass subs. So instead of getting a healthy marketplace where he could skim 30% off every sale, he instead wanted to curate a new subscription service where he would just have monthly recurring revenue. And then he could twist the knobs every month, every year about how much of that money to spend back out. And then he could make up his own profit margin to a degree as long as he keeps the service healthy and people subscribing. But couldn't even get to that first hump, which, you know, as well, I won't pass judgment on that, I guess. I don't know what to think about that. To me, maybe I'm fixating on this too much, but this seems to be, and Xboxes in general, Xbox's struggle to get a foothold over the last 10 years. It is, to me, representative of the diverging nature of games entirely. Maybe I'm just preoccupied about this because we just saw so much data about how fractured the game space has become, almost on a generational line. Millennials, we remember the old ways. You buy a console, you buy a game, you own the console, you own the game, you put the game in the console and you play the game. But that's not how newer generations are interacting with gaming at all. And I think Spencer's strategy was trying to hybridize. It was trying to bridge that gap where by focusing on PC, by focusing on services, and by focusing on cloud, you can reach 20-somethings that don't have the money to buy a console or grew up playing Minecraft and that's it. So they're just used to seeing a login screen being all that stands between them and a bunch of custom servers that have their own unique games and stuff like that. So if you turn Xbox into that, you sign in here, here's your grid of games that you have access to via Game Pass. I can see it. I could see the strategy, even if it didn't play out in retrospect. And, that's a bit sorrowful. It's so much easier to pass judgment on something where the strategy is obviously just raunchy from the get-go. And I think a lot of millennials would say that strategy was raunchy because it kind of changed the face of how we interact with games. But as far as I'm concerned, I still got to play a lot of awesome games. And I hope I still get to. We'll see. But as far as Game Pass goes, Bruce, now that Spencer's out and theoretically his entire corporate strategy is not being bought into by Microsoft anymore, where do you think this sends Game Pass?
Jeez, man, I don't think Game Pass is dead in the water, but I do think Game Pass is going to be curated. We're going to get like 10 games a month, but they're big games probably. And we're going to be paying a lot of money. So they raised the price at $30 a month. I do think that price raise was Satya Nadella. I don't think that was Phil Spencer. So, and then Satya Nadella is still the CEO of Microsoft. So that's going to, and I promise you that Satya Nadella and Asha Sharma are working day by day right next to each other. And if Satya Nadella goes to Asha Sharma, hey, we got to raise the price of Game Pass. She goes, you got it, boss. And then they raise the price. There's no way she's pushing back on that. So that's what's going to happen with Game Pass is I think we're going to get less games and it's going to be more expensive. And then they're going to have a flat line of growth. Like it's going to decline and then sort of flatten out. I don't know what their Game Pass subs are at now, but I would imagine they lose about 50% of those subs and then decline. And then it's like at this point, then it's just a flat line, right? They've got the people that they know are their luxury spenders. This is something that's happening macroeconomically. People that have a lot of money are still spending a lot of money. But people that don't have a lot of money are spending less. And that's very bad for the economy, by the way. But that is what currently these companies are trying to monetize on. They're trying to monetize on the people that are already rich and already have a lot of money to spend. And that's what's probably going to happen for Game Pass. I don't think it's going to become something for everybody like Phil Spencer wanted it to be.
Yeah, which is a shame. I'm thinking forward to not only their next console, which we'll talk about in a bit, but also their PC focus. The fact that Game Pass is still about half the cost on PC that it is on console, I think, Bruce, is not only illustrative of what you were saying, that there are customers they know they've got that can absorb these price increases without it breaking their budgets or really even affecting their budgets. But I saw Game Pass as part of an investment in PC because PC was a growth ecosystem and potentially a way to grab a bunch of customers that PlayStation hasn't snapped up already. That's still a sound strategy, and again, even in tandem with the data that we covered a few days ago, still existent and seems to have momentum going into the future. So I still think that I still believe even at the corporate level, there's reason to believe that Game Pass has a viable future of growth through PC. And I think we can see that through the handheld they put out with Asus, and then also the rumors about their next console being a console PC hybrid. So until that happens, until they try that, launching their own curated PC, I think Game Pass will largely be safe. After that, though, depending on how that goes, that's, I think, when we'll start seeing a lot of tinkering with the formula. What I'm expecting is, and we're already seeing it to a degree, the early access shit is a prime example of this, of ways to make money off of games that are on Game Pass, even if people are already subscribing to Game Pass. Another interesting bit, the Warlock expansion for Diablo 2 Remastered. Diablo 2 Remastered's on Game Pass. Warlock is not. So if you have Game Pass, you still got to pay $25 to get that add-on. So in a way, I think maybe dusting off their old games and adding add-ons and like low overhead. I'm not implying that the Warlock expansion was low overhead, but maybe it was. But just adding some new content to beloved classics, especially classics that hit the millennials that have money to burn. That might be the strategy they pivot to with Game Pass. It's like Game Pass gives you this layer of the game, but if you want everything else, that's extra. And I don't think people are going to like that. And I think it's also going to drive down the perception that Game Pass is viable in the first place. I remember even like playing Diablo 2 Remastered on stream. They immediately balked at the idea of buying content for a game that you didn't quote unquote own, which makes sense. But also at the same time, I've disassociated from the concept of ownership so much. To me, it's just what gets me in the game today, and what's the cheapest way that I can get there. I think a lot of people would say, well, owning the game, sure, but maybe not. Maybe if you pay $60 for it 4 years ago and you only play it twice, well, you probably could have saved money just by renting it those 2 times through a service like Game Pass. I don't know. A lot of people, I think you start to hit real perceptive barriers about the concept of ownership. And I think, again, a very millennial mindset of if I buy the game, I have the disc and I'll always have access to it. Whereas I think newer generations aren't that hung up on it, but Xbox can't get them. And also they have no money. So that's another problem too. But I don't know. I think Game Pass is fine for now. I think it would almost be a political statement. I think if Asha, like in her first 6 months, started making serious alterations to a program that defined her CEO's predecessor. So I think one way or the other, we got at least a year, and then maybe we start seeing pivots in strategy. I think maybe coinciding with the launch of their next console. Yeah,
speaking of which, just real quick to refer to your Game Pass stuff, it's really interesting you're talking about PC Game Pass, because you're right. PC Game Pass is absolutely the best value right now, but I think they're going to start raising the price on that too. And the reason is I'm getting to the next Xbox hardware. So the next Xbox hardware is reportedly a PC console hybrid. That's the thing, right? Like they did that with the ROG Xbox Ally X, which is it is literally just a PC, and then it's got like an Xbox app that runs on it. That's where you launch all your games from. But you could turn on Windows if you want. I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to do with the next Xbox console. So in turn, I think they're going to raise the price of PC Game Pass, because then they're going to put a bunch of games on PC Game Pass and be like, no, we raised the price on it, but there's a bunch of other games. And also, if anything if PlayStation is any indication, I think it's going to be expensive. I think it's going to be very expensive. Which it's weird now, right? Because now I was just saying, well, hey, raise the price and everything will be fine. I don't think now is the time to raise the price. So I think this is a weird time when they're going to be like, well, it's $1,000. It has to be $1,000 because it's a PC and an Xbox. So it's basically like you can use it for, whatever word processing and Excel and all the other bullshit that you would normally use a PC for. And then also play games on it. And it's $1,000 and it's branded Xbox. I don't think that's the right move. Also, it's going to be crammed full of AI bullshit too. So I'm going to get to that stuff. I'm going to talk about the AI with Ashes Sharn in a second, but just more specifically, the next Xbox hardware. I do not have faith in this machine. I'm very worried for it. I'm worried for the price of it. I'm worried for what it does. I don't really know what games it's going to have on it. Like, I already have a PC. Why do I need the Xbox, right? That's where I keep landing over and over. If it's like a Xbox PC hybrid, well, for all the people that have a PC or a gaming PC even, or even a fucking Steam Deck, they're gonna be like, why?
Yeah, that was the genuine reaction to the "This is an Xbox" ad campaign. I think I hate to keep relating to this, but I do think it's a millennial mindset. You need to make the case why I need to buy your hardware, and that case ought to be exclusive games. That's the dynamic we're used to. Because, value didn't work. Ecosystem is actually seemingly the determining factor. People love PlayStation because that's where their games are. They've been buying games there digitally for 10 to 15 years now. Their trophy lists, friends lists, everything is there. It's almost like Apple. Like, Apple can be out here with an iPhone that's 1.5 times their competition because people are bought into that ecosystem. The friction of thinking about downloading all your apps from another store is enough to keep people in that ecosystem and using the hardware they're familiar with and the UX flow that they've already enjoyed for years. I do think if the next Xbox is outrageously expensive, it will at least reset people's perceptions. It'll be, if it can become the Ferrari of gaming consoles or whatever. Gamers are weirdly aspire to buy ever increasingly pricier hardware. So maybe that'll at least perceptively turn around. They have this weird. I think because of the Series S and because of Game Pass, they've been associated with devaluing gaming, which is something you'd think people would like. That was an issue with Steam a million years ago when they started doing Steam sales. Weirdly, publishers hated it or were really worried about it, but gamers everywhere were like, yay, Gaben is saving us with all these cheap games. But for some reason, it didn't work for Xbox. I think, again, it's the ownership concept that kept getting in the way. But yeah, they're... I think to your point, though, when it comes to value... I think if they're truly moving into being this platform-spanning service, then I'm sure they're thinking that other people can handle the cheap PCs. We'll put out the big one and then maybe license our brand or work in partnerships with other people. Even it's funny bringing up it's funny bringing up the Xbox Series S because Valve's Steam Machine, everybody's so excited about that, but it's essentially a Series S. Just not explicitly gated to an ecosystem, even though it's going to be soft gated to Steam. But you can install whatever you want on it. Yeah, even a Steam machine can be an Xbox. If you install Windows on it, which I assume you will be able to do because you can do that on a Steam Deck. So I don't know, that just interesting comparisons in how people perceive things. But I think that's where they're going, is that maybe they're putting all their prestige. And they're just essentially going to try the opposite of what they tried last hardware generation with this one, because who even knows anymore? And then if the goal really is to get people on Game Pass and get their high margin dollars, they can do that just as well through a really expensive machine or an inexpensive machine or someone else's machine.
Okay, so what does all this mean for the Xbox studios, the studios they've purchased over the years? I don't want to transition into Ashes Sharma yet, because Ashes Sharma is going to be the end of this. But I do think they work hand in hand. And the reason I say that is because I think there's going to be a lot of layoffs. I think they're going to get rid of a lot of studios, maybe not wholesale, but a lot of developers. Because again, Ashes Sharma is AI. She is AI. Equate her to AI currently. I know she said that we're not going to have AI slop. That's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. They're going to try and figure out ways to put AI into everything. So I think for Xbox Studios, this is not good news. If you are Obsidian, if you're like Lawrence wrote in Double Fine and Ninja Theory, I don't, what's the name of Ninja Theory is Hellblade, right? I can't believe they're still around. I'm shocked. Like Hellblade was not a success. It was a great video game.
And it took so long to come out. Oh man.
Yeah. So this is very bad for a lot of these studios that are doing very good work, that are making great video games. It just takes forever. And Asha Sharma, I promise you, is looking at these numbers because Satya Nadella is over her shoulder being like, we need 20% profit margin. I asked this from Phil and now he's gone. So we need this from you now. And it's going to be really bad for these studios. And we've seen this transition now with a lot of different studios, not just studios that are under the Xbox brand. There's just layoffs on layoffs. And it's a real bummer. And speaking to Lawrence's millennial mindset, this is the transition. Because the millennial mindset was, we have a studio of 300 people and they make one game every 5 years. That is not the case anymore. And it's very sad because I like to see artists make really cool stuff and then release their amazing art every few years. That doesn't seem like the business model anymore.
I agree, unfortunately, and it's very scary. A lot of these studio acquisitions seemed to be an attempt to populate Game Pass with a variety of games. Double Fine themselves with Psychonauts 2 and Keeper. Like those are kind of darling video games that I think, according to Spencer's strategy, would contribute to the vibrance of Game Pass and make it so everyone's going to want to sign up for this. You love COD, we got COD. You want some weird-ass game from Double Fine, guess what? We got that too. You want Hellblade 2? You want Icelandic women muttering in your ear while you play some long poetic tale about schizophrenia? We got it, baby! Didn't work. So if we view Spencer's exit as judgment on his Game Pass strategy, then yes, the easiest thing to say is chop all of these art house developers out. There's no reason to pay for them, especially United States game developer salaries. The games industry in general is moving towards outsourcing, so they have no reason to keep these expensive developers on a first-party payroll when they can go to the market and license who knows how many indie darling games that don't bring any Game Pass subscribers for a fraction of the cost of paying for all these developers to work wholesale first party. The idea was to make them exclusive, but people don't care about that, at least in terms of a subscription service. It doesn't seem like exclusivity drives a whole lot these days anymore. Spider-Man 1 was the last exclusive that really spiked console sales. Now it just seems like it's coasting on ecosystem and your built-in market.
Other than maybe Nintendo. That's, yeah.
Yes. I was just thinking about that. Yeah, you got, I mean, they fielded Mario Kart, their biggest, heaviest hitter with the Switch 2. And I'm sure when Animal Crossing comes to Switch 2, if it does, I'm sure we'll see a spike in sales because it's one of those games that can drive that. So it still matters. But again, not in the way it used to, not in the millennial years. So yeah, again, thinking about kind of linking this to the next topic, talking about what we make of Asha Sharma. I kind of agree, Bruce. I think you don't get a role like this unless you convince all the stakeholders that you're willing to play ball, which is to say you do what they want. And if they want you to get revenues out of the Xbox division, you're like, yes, I know how to do it. Here's my 5-point plan. And that's how you get into the role. Also, she hasn't been at Microsoft very long, so she doesn't really have... Again, this is total assumptions from the outside, but I'm going to guess in her limited tenure at Microsoft, she probably hasn't done nearly the amount of like glad handing and allegiance building that Spencer had done, and also had accrued a certain amount of respect just by working his way up from the inside over decades and decades. So she doesn't even have the footing to push back if she wanted to. So I think she got the job because she said yes to everything, and now she's got to execute on that. Maybe she's cunning enough to maneuver this ecosystem without just flatly saying yes to every demand headed down to her. But the circumstances of this appointment don't feel like that. We'll see when we get there. But so far, I don't know. All the email, the message was very diplomatic, very corporate. It's saying the easy things that don't really pin you down to anything you actually have to deliver.
So this is the part of the podcast I was the most excited about. I was talking about Asha Sharma because I saw a lot of debate over the weekend once this news hit that she was being the new CEO of Xbox. And everybody's talking about whether or not, do you need experience to run a gaming? Do you need to play games, basically? Do you need to play games to run a gaming brand? And everyone's like, no, yes, blah, blah, blah. I kind of throw all that out. I'm going to throw all that out. And the reason is I'm going to throw all that out from my experience in the business over the last 20 years. Asha Sharma looks to me, and I'm usually very, Lawrence knows this, I'm usually a very optimistic person. I'm not at all optimistic. At all when it comes to any of these transitions right now. So number one, since she had spent 3-4 years at each little spot before she moved on, that's bad. That generally means she's there to sunset the Xbox brand. That usually means that she's going to come on and be like, we're going to do everything you want. And then 2 years later, done. Because she knows that's the actual plan. Satya Nadella is like, we just got to shut it down. We're just going to shut it down. You're going to be the CEO on the way out. Are you okay with that? You're going to take a $10 million a year pay increase, but you're only going to do it for about 3 years, and then you can use this to move on. Are you okay with that? Yes. Done. I think that's what this is. I don't think that she's going to go on and be like, I'm going to be here at Xbox for another 40 years. We're going to run Xbox and make the best games with the least AI. I don't think it's going to be any of that. I think she's just there to sunset Xbox. And I know that sounds really pessimistic, especially coming from me. But that's what I've seen. I've seen this happen. We saw this at Machinima. We had a random CEO come in, some random dude who I'd never even heard of. He was like, he'd been a CEO for like 1 year before that or something. And when he came to Machinima, he's like, I'm going to do all this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And I saw a bunch of employees get convinced at Machinima. They were like, yeah, this guy's got it. And guess what? It was a couple of years later, and they're like, they've been acquired. So that could be, by the way, that could be happening to Xbox. They could get acquired by someone else. It may not just be a total shutdown. Somebody could buy Xbox. Sony could buy Xbox. Who knows? I know, right? But that's what this feels like to me. It's either a sunset or an acquisition. So, and also, just to answer the question of whether or not she needs experience playing games to run a gaming brand, no, I don't think so. I think it's totally fine if she doesn't have any. If she's got business experience, she knows how to run a brand. I think that's totally fine. I think playing games helps, and the reason I say that answer to that question right now is because I still think there's a sunset involved. So if everyone's like, no, she doesn't need to play games to run Xbox. Not for 3 years, she doesn't. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that like she's going to probably launch the new Xbox in 2027 or whatever it's going to be. That'll go on for a year or two, and then maybe that'll be it for Xbox if they don't pick up in the next few years. I don't even like talking about the AI portion of Asha Sharma, where she's coming from AI. Oh, this hurts my soul so much. I don't even want to think about, because they're already integrating AI into Halo. We already know that with the Halo campaign Evolved. I've been reading reports about how it was going to have AI in it, and I was like, ugh. This kind of stuff makes me so angry, and it's only going to get worse if she's coming from AI and she's coming to the Xbox brand, and she's like, I'm not going to put any slop in it. Yeah, right. I don't believe that for a second. And I would love to have Asha Sharma on the show. I would love to ask her all these questions, and maybe she'll convince me. But I don't believe that for 1 second. I think that now all these Xbox games are going to be packed full of AI. The new Xbox is going to be packed full of AI, all this shit that I don't ever want. They're doing that now with Copilot. Microsoft's doing that with Copilot. Maybe at the direction of Satya Nadella, maybe not at the direction of Asha Sharma. So I'll lay it at the foot of Satya Nadella, hoping that Asha Sharma will be able to take the Xbox brand in the future and not sunset it with a bunch of AI bullshit.
Yeah, that is a depressive but believable vision of the future. I'd be surprised if the plan is to completely sunset the Xbox brand or even sell it off. Does Microsoft even sell anything? They only acquire and close things, I think. And to think about, like, who would even buy them in this day and age? No one's got acquisition money except maybe Tencent. That would be weird if Tencent acquired Xbox. That's the only, like, yeah, maybe PlayStation. God, that'd exit. I don't know. PlayStation's doing fine enough. I think they'd rather see Xbox go away than acquire it. If it even registers on their radar much anymore, but
that's why I think it's a sunset. I was just thinking in the outside the box, but I'm pretty sure it's a sunset.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a sunset for a part of the Xbox business. I think a lot of those art house studios are going away. I think a lot of even the first party studios, the bigger ones, are probably going to go away too. I'm shocked that Halo Studios is still around. I think it's they're just tenured because John Halo is so inextricably, that's the word, tied to the brand of Xbox, despite their attempts to maybe diversify a bit. But yeah, I can for sure see Sharma coming in as your goal is to hatchet out all the costs and get this division to 20% profit margin. That's what you do over the next 3 years. We get to that profit margin by ditching studios and ditching all these expensive developers that we're paying to stay alive, kick their ass out on the street, and then we get our next hardware out there because those plans are already in motion and the contracts have already been signed and bills are already paid. That was like Sarah Bond was putting in a lot of that work. So I think a lot of that stuff's already in motion, and it's not. I don't think it's so much of a corporate incident that she would have to like cancel contracts that are already in motion. I think the next console is still probably going to come out, but I think the fact that it is itself a hybrid console is already showing where they were going as a brand. I do think they just want to be a service company in the way that Microsoft enjoys the margins of all their other services. And there is a future where they can get there. There's even a future where, we still play fun games through that. But I do think it's decoupling from, again, this more rigid kind of millennial system of selling a console and then having exclusive games that convince you to buy it. Now, how do you get people to use the service? Theoretically, that's what Asha Sharma ought to be good at. Maybe. If we're looking on the bright side, if she's not just in there to do a hatchet job, and she's actually in there to acquire new customers, theoretically, her role at Instacart and maybe even Meta has informed that, how to get out to market and convince people to try your thing. And I think in that regard, you don't really need a lot of gaming experience to do that. You just have to understand your product and understand how to communicate that to people. And I think you can understand gaming as a product without gaming much yourself. I think in contrast to that, we did have a CEO gamer. Phil Spencer was frequently seen playing games on Xbox Live. People were tracking his achievements and stuff like that. And I think he made a lot of decisions that were gamer focused, which also makes it, to me, it's extra tragic that the very audience that I thought he catered directly to turned on him and started pointing and laughing at him for his lack of results in the last 5 years or so. But I do think he always made those decisions, but I think it's also a cautionary tale. How that experience doesn't necessarily guarantee you success, even if you understand ostensibly what the market wants. I think the market wanted a really good Halo game. You couldn't get that one out, but Bobby Kotick, not a gamer, doesn't give a shit, but he ran Activision like a business. And, I'm not saying you got to give the man credit, but if your job is to make money, he made fucking money. And he converted a lot of those properties. He either burned them out or turned them into, multi-decade money machines. So one way or the other, he knew how to extract cash from the market to the ire of some people. But, Call of Duty is still an institution, so it didn't seem to matter much to people that still enjoy that. So yeah, I can see it going two ways. I do think we're in for some rough waters ahead. I do think we're in for even more layoff announcements. Phil Spencer already was in charge of several layoff waves at Xbox and their multiple brands. They closed studios. Bethesda got rid of Tango Gameworks, which sucked. And yeah, to your point, I'm kind of shocked that Ninja Theory, Compulsion Games, I'm shocked that they're still hanging on. But I'm not confident it's going to stay that way because yes, the grand strategy of securing these quirky exclusives just doesn't exist anymore.
It's a real bummer. I really, when I was reading this on Friday, I was really sad. Actually, I was like, man, oh man, this is a really bad transition. Especially, I'm speaking to our audience really because our audience are generally millennial gamers. Like they're people that remember, the good old days of games. But truly, those were the good old days because people had money to spend, and people don't have money to spend now. This is not going to go well. I don't think it's going to go well at all. There is an outlier case that I've been thinking more and more about as we've been talking, which is that Asha Sharma transitions the Xbox business from the traditional, what we know, to the new. What's happening with Roblox and what's happening with there is a possibility she understands the new pulse of gaming and transitions us into a business that even like you and I don't really want. but maybe the new generation does. Maybe Gen Z and Gen Alpha are into it, and she turns Xbox into that brand. That is a possibility, really is. I don't know if that's where her expertise lies. I tend to really balk at AI immediately, so when I hear that, I don't like it. But maybe that's just because I'm an old man. I don't think so personally. I've not yet seen anybody use AI to effect that I'm like, I want to spend money on that. But maybe Asha Sharma is the first person to do it on a large scale.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I'm conflicted. Like kind of like you said of acquiring this new audience or new paying customers versus maintaining a familiar form factor and experience of a particular type of game that I don't know, maybe get collecting a little dust these days. I think by the fact that they are making a hybrid console, to me, it expresses, at least on a hardware level, a desire for those two worlds to live side by side. You can have your AI slop, Roblox knockoff, generation ecosystem gaming environment over here, and also you can have your more formal, traditional, millennial-style video games over here, and theoretically they can all be collected under the same service. But yeah, if people just don't sign up for it, then that's that. I would like to see a world where, yeah, the gaming ecosystem is a little more diverse in terms of its participants and its payers. Because yes, it does seem to be largely focusing, kind of like you said, the sort of K-shaped economy. Everyone seems to be focused on the increasingly shrinking base of people that have the money to spend. Doesn't look good either. And yeah, that's what Sharma's kind of staring at. And that's what Spencer was staring at, and he tried his best with Game Pass, and that didn't really play out. So, the future of Xbox and AI is so mysterious, and that's what also has me uncomfortable. I've been curious about this. The ROG Xbox Ally X has AI coprocessors in it that, as far as I can tell, are not used for anything right now. But it's part of the Xbox ecosystem. They even talked about how the Xbox architecture wanted those processors there or whatever in some of the presentations that we saw. So to me, that was forward-looking. Xbox is already thinking about AI features that aren't ready for rollout yet, but are probably going to be rolled out with their next Xbox and whatever the future of that service is going to look like. I imagine that stuff will get retroactively pushed to the ROG Xbox handhelds as well, and that's why those processors are there. But it's concerning to me that they haven't shared any vision of what that future looks like. Maybe they're just saving it for when they reveal it. I think we've seen some bits of it. There's like, there's the Copilot friend that'll help you play through games. They've showed their AI engine where they can interpret gameplay footage just by training an interactive agent on gameplay footage of another game. We're seeing that out of Google and some other companies now too. Maybe that's it. Maybe the next Xbox will just extrapolate an entire game for you if you just give it a phrase. I don't know if that's fun. I don't know if that's interesting. Fundamentally, you know what it is, Bruce? It feels to me like we're at an inflection point with the games industry, because the games industry is kind of losing players and it's losing money to prediction markets and OnlyFans and things like that. It's losing, or social media even. Gaming, which used to be sort of the format for computational engagement. Like, it was fun to play video, way more fun than reading a book. But now people are getting more entranced by doom scrolling OnlyFans, or putting prediction market bets on Kalshi or whatever. That's more thrilling or more engaging than a video game. So what happens to video games? They become a pastime for old timers like us because the new stuff is far too stimulating. Or they become more like that, which is what I don't want, but I think that's what the AI features are meant to do. They're meant to adapt the entire experience of gaming to be something more sticky, engaging, cortisol-raising, like prediction markets or scrolling social media.
Lawrence, I think you have more vision than every single other person I've ever heard talk about AI at all. I think nobody has any idea of what AI is going to be for video games. I think they're like making these coprocessors, and I think they're shoving Copilot into Windows because they don't know. They think that this is the future technology, and I think it probably is. Part of it is the future technology. AI truly will be a part of what we're using in the future. But I don't think it's going to be at all what people are saying it is. And I will say this again, like I've been saying on Inside Games for months, maybe years. CEOs are pushing AI because they're going to lay people off. That's it. That's the only reason. It's not because they're excited about the new technology and to make lots of fun games that they get to make lots of money on. No. They think it's just going to make it easier to lay people off and have less people at their organization so they can cut costs. That is the only reason. And I truly do think that what you said about AI is so much more educated and so it's such a cool vision of the future that they don't have at all. And I don't think, because it's really hard to execute, truly. So I don't think they're going to do any of that. I think they're just going to keep trying to be like, oh, it's got AI. Look, like Clippy will help you play the game. Like, that's like bullshit. Nobody cares about that. And everyone's gonna be like, this is fucking, and that's also broken. Like, it also sucks. So I think that's where we're landing right now.
Yeah, that's the fun to laugh at version of the future. I see a future where you queue for a match in Overwatch and the AI, like the LLM, can tell that you're on the verge of quitting because of how rattled you are. So instead of matching you into an actual match, it matches you against a bunch of AI bots that play like people, and it seems like a match, but it feeds you a win and keeps you playing. So to me, it's the, again, very millennial mindset, the rigid prepackaged idea of a video game, I think will fade away in lieu of games that change on the fly to engage you. And I think that's where the AI comes in, is it'll profile you based on the way that you play and the games that you play, and it'll deliver to you the most masturbatory, engaging experience that AI can summon.
You're exactly right. I think it's already happening, even currently in video games right now. And it'll be interesting to see if the population pushes back on that. Well, because I've seen a lot of people push back on that they're like, oh, these are bots. We don't want that. So it'll be really interesting to see if people really are like, I would rather be fed a win with bots. Or if they're like, I'm just going to stop playing altogether because I'm playing against bots and I know it. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's a very interesting vision of the future, Lawrence, that I think you're absolutely right on.
And if social media has shown me anything, it's that people will devour media that agrees with what they already want, but they don't have any time for truth that disagrees with them. If you take that over into gaming, people don't want the truth that you're garbage at Overwatch and you deserve to lose. They want to win and feel good. So I'm a bit worried about that. But again, we'll always have the old games. Right before we started recording, I stumbled across this. GamesBeat asked Seamus Blackley, an Xbox founder, about this new transition, and his comments basically agree almost word for word with what you said, Bruce. He said, quote, Satya Nadella has made an incredible number of bets and invested an incredible amount of money and credibility in the transform model AI future. Xbox, like a lot of businesses that aren't the core AI business, is being sunsetted. They don't say that, but that's what's happening. I expect that the new CEO, Asha Sharma, her job is going to be as a palliative care doctor who slides Xbox gently into the night.
Really, this is it. This might be, I could be wrong, but I think this is probably it.
And what happens to all those studios? What happens to id Software? What happens to Machine Games? Oh, I got a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach.
They start making video games for Roblox, Lawrence.
Don't make me install Roblox. I was able to duck installing Fortnite when they acquired Harmonix because I still want to play Rock Band, and that's the only way to do it. The Xbox Series X is the only console that's compatible with Rock Band, and what did that get them? Nothing. Except for me still having my drum kit in the background that I hook up once a year.
Good for you, Lawrence. You're holding on to the old ways, and I appreciate it.
And I'm trying. We're all trying out here. I want to welcome the future, but I also want good video games, so kind of torn between two things right now. But I think that's I don't know, Bruce, do you have any more summarizing comments about this?
No, that's it. This is real pessimistic news for me.
Eesh. Well, we've gone and bummed ourselves out. Many such cases when it comes to games reporting in the 2020s. We have more games than ever, and yet somehow things are bad. How did we get here? We got here because you managed to watch over an hour of us talking about Xbox, so thank you for doing that. We really enjoy covering games here. We're glad that you decided to stick with us during this newsy podcasting. It's a new idea. I guess for the bigger stories, we'll try it out. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. We also have a Patreon. We post all our content there. And I fish out some deep memes for every episode. So this one will have a fresh, free meme for you. All you got to do is go over to the Patreon and check it out. And thank you again for watching. We'll see you next time on Inside Games.